Welcome back to the podcast today with me, Johnny Pardo. And today I welcome Blaise Kennedy onto the show. And I'm excited to hear about the work that Blaise is doing in the work. We're going to be covering things like relational attunement, spiritual awakening, embodied awareness, and much, much more. So a quick introduction to Blaise. So Blaise Kennedy is a teacher and guide working at the intersection of embodied awareness, relational attunement, and spiritual awakening. He supports growth-orientated people who are spiritually curious, emotionally honest, and ready for change that shows up in daily life, not only in meditation. Welcome to the show today, Blaise. Glad to have you on.
Happy to be here, Johnny. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Blaise, I first like to kind of jump into a little bit of a definition. Sometimes thrown out there, I hear the word like spiritual and, people have different kind of words they use, but I'd love to know, what is a spiritual awakening for you?
Yeah, I will answer that question. And I also want to say it's said in my introduction that I work at the intersection of embodied awareness, relational attunement, and spiritual awakening. And for some of you, that might be jargon, but for me, it represents a change in human consciousness and something that is opening up for all of us that was not so available to our ancestors. And so spiritual awakening specifically could be defined broadly. It could be defined as having some sort of heart opening that connects you to life, or having some sort of Kundalini awakening in your body through your meditation or yoga practice. But I think most broadly, I would define it as the recognition, at least in some part, of the nature of reality. It means we go from a world view based on our experience, the way we feel, from I am a separate physical object interacting with a separate physical world, to that reality breaking down or breaking through in some way at some level, where we start to realize that there's this phenomenon called consciousness, and my body feels like it's part of it. And so I move from feeling like a separate individual stuck in my body to being a part of this thing called consciousness. And that can be experienced in many ways at many different levels, and is usually progressive. But there's this great desire. What is the nature of reality? What am I? What is this experience that we're having? And we can think about it philosophically. A spiritual awakening is a radical shift in our experience of what we are and how we experience reality.
A radical shift in our experience and an experience of our reality. I like that. Blaise, you mentioned the word consciousness as well. I'd love to know what that is for you.
Yeah, again, all terms that people define in their own ways. If you took probably 10 spiritual teachers, you could probably get 10 different definitions. I've long thought of making a video montage of all teachers using their terms in different ways. The worldview that I grew up in, what I accepted to be real when I was a child, and the world that I view up in, is the base reality, the fundamental ground of reality is physical. And out of this, we have the experience of consciousness. And somewhere right now, at a university somewhere, there are researchers looking, how does consciousness get created out of the brain? How does it get created out of our biology? And important and beautiful work. For me, this shift in reality means it inverts that worldview that I came up with. Instead of consciousness being something that is generated out of my material body or out of my brain or out of my nervous system, it's inverted, which means that everything that I'm experiencing is consciousness. That's the base state, the fundamental building block of reality is consciousness. And out of that comes my thoughts, my feelings, my sensations, all of the subtle qualities of my consciousness, my physical body. Everything is being generated or manifested as part of consciousness. The way to think about this is like either a dream or a video game. A video game is a creation. It's being generated, as is a dream. When you have a dream at night, there's no reality to your dream other than the fact that it's happening. What's real about a dream is that you're experiencing it. But what is it made out of? What would you say a dream is made out of? It's made out of your energy. It's made out of your perception. And so a spiritual awakening means I still see a physical world. My name is still Blaise. I'm still sitting at my desk. But I experience all of these objects and qualities of life as being emanations or manifestations of consciousness, like being in some sort of generated virtual reality experience, just a real one that includes everything and everyone.
Mm.
So consciousness would be the sum total of everything we experience. In religious terms, you might call it creation. In the Bible, for example, it would say the universe was created or the world was created. And in science, you would say, well, there was the Big Bang and the universe was created. Well, in both cases, what we're seeing is that there's an impermanence to our reality. It's not forever and always. It has a beginning, it has an end. It's an expression. And so this includes everything. This includes everything that ever has, was, or is, or will be. And you can look at it from many different philosophical perspectives. But again, it's something that it's most important to experience rather than to think about.
Experience being the key word. Was there a moment or an instance in your life where you went through what you would call like an awakening or a shift of how you saw things?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's still happening.
Mm.
I really hope it never stops. Again, I started my life with a very normal perspective. I probably would have argued against all these things when I was a child. I had a lot of problems. I didn't get into this um, viewpoint on consciousness or healing because I wanted to so much as I got really stuck and I had a lot of problems with things like self-esteem and consciousness, but more intensely, even drugs and addiction and just a broad sense of failing at life. And at one point I realized, what I haven't really tried is anything spiritual or related to consciousness or meditation, anything like that. And I had a friend who had a book on his shelf and I read it. It was in my early 20s and I thought, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get into this. I'm going to try paying attention to the nature of reality. And it took me a few years. I had to go through a treatment center for addiction and I had to do all kinds of stuff before I could really understand what I was looking at. But I absolutely did have a particular moment where things changed. It actually felt like I got struck by lightning through the top of my head. And my perception of reality changed really dramatically. And that was the beginning of a very intense and continuous process of movement and change within my body and mind to make my whole experience of me in line with this higher reality. It's one thing to glimpse a higher reality. It's another thing to have your whole body, your mind, your personality, the way you treat people, the way you feel about yourself, the way you feel about other people shift to be actually coherent or in line with this realization. And for me, that means a lot of feelings, a lot of change, a lot of pressure to open. And that's what I've spent the last, I don't know, 15 years of my life doing pretty continuously. It's my full-time job.
Mm, I love it. Do you know what the book was that you found?
Yeah, it was Power versus Force. He had a couple books
Uh,
on the shelf, but it was Power versus Force. And I
David.
remember the man, it was the beginning of experiencing people who would share their experience of life. There was a couple other ones later. It was just so radically different from anything I'd ever heard anyone say or anything that I had experienced. It was like listening to it was unrelatable. People would talk about energy or light or the transparency of consciousness or the singular nature of reality or oneness. I would think I cannot relate to any of these things. But I just decided that's what I was going to do anyways. So it was originally the Power versus Force
David Hawkins.
by David Hawkins. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, big book, big read. So it took a while to kind of implement or kind of really feel that into existence from the concepts you were learning.
Well, I had a very blue collar experience. I had a lot of real problems that I had to deal with. Again, I was a drug addict. It was deceitful. I didn't know how to be with myself in any real way. I had no ability to be in relationships. I've had a lot of really grounded human challenges. And part of my gift is to link for people how those human challenges relate to our existential or spiritual challenges, how to make sense of a world that um, where we have things day to day that we need to do and work on, and we're called to be better in relationship and in our life and in our own relationship with our thinking or our feelings about ourselves or our developmental history and these higher ambitions. How do we make sense of a world where we have day to day human challenges and then we have these grand spiritual visions? And so I've had to spend a lot of time in both realities, figuring how they work together. And at first, as you say, I had a lot of pretty basic skills that I needed to learn that I didn't have any experience with. And that really supported me later to have these bigger openings because they're very much related. I think to sum it all up, if you want to know the nature of reality, if you want to awaken in this open way, you're going to have to know the nature of yourself as a human being. Like being honest with yourself and other people and seeing the nature of reality go perfectly well together. The universe is honest by nature. And I would say the key, one of the keys to open that door is just basic human honesty and integrity. And so that I had a lot of pressure to learn that. And then as I sort of ate my broccoli, so to speak, as I did these really basic things, then I could have the sort of fancier stuff later. It made more sense and I was more ready for it.
What do you think holds people back from that honesty with themselves, or that emotional honesty with themselves?
Yeah, well, I had to work backwards. It's like, first I had to realize, I became aware, wow, I'm really dishonest. I avoid pain and difficulty, and I'm very disconnected from myself emotionally. First step was realizing that was true. Okay. And it was humbling to recognize and acknowledge that, but I did it in the context of people who were supporting me to realize that. And again, I was at a treatment center and they were very generous in letting me know that I was not living well. And I was very grateful for those pointers. And I started to construct a view of how that could come to be. Like, why are people dishonest? Why do people have anxiety disorders? Why do they use addiction? Why do they use substances? Why is this happening? And you can't really think about that. You have to discover that by feeling yourself, and the cause of your symptoms becomes apparent. There's a really beautiful quote that I love that's very directive that a spiritual teacher uses, Thomas Hugel. He says, "We don't feel our trauma. We feel the symptoms of our trauma." And this understanding of reality became constructed over time as I began to feel myself and really notice what was happening for me. Well, I was experiencing trauma. I was experiencing the symptoms of trauma. Fundamentally, trauma is like a kind of ejection seat for your truth. The basic premise is that what's true for you is overwhelming. You cannot tolerate it, especially as a child, and especially when you are disconnected. And so one primary example of this is quite dramatic is I had a parent die when I was a child. My father died when I was 12. And if you'd asked me after that, I would say, no big deal. I got over that. That was in the past. But I was completely unaware of how much that had affected me. And that is because essentially when it happened, I disassociated from myself. One of the key features of disassociation is that you don't know that it happened. You leave the scene of whatever was happening for you. So I would have told you, I got over my father's death. No big deal. Happened in the past, not connected to the problems I'm having in my life now as a 20-year-old or 18-year-old. Totally different thing. That was then and this is now.
Mm.
As I started to feel my body, I realized actually when my father died, I had an overwhelming amount of grief and discomfort with showing that and being that in my life as a child. And I did not have the support to go through that. And so I left myself. And what I've actually been doing for the past 12 years is living as a kind of zombie. And all of my behaviors, all the challenges that I'm having, all the dishonesty, all of the avoidance really is a mechanism to help me cope with something that I can't tolerate.
Mm.
And this helped me make sense where in one hand, yes, I'm doing all these terrible things and I have these bad habits and they certainly need to be corrected. But it's not because I'm not intelligent. It's not because there's something wrong with me fundamentally. It's from a lack of access to resources and support, both internally and externally. And so this model is what I teach there today, which is really helpful. Everything that we are seeking to overcome, my solution is always to give more resources, give more support, more care, and more resources. We don't need to be harder on ourselves in any way. That's not really helpful. What we need to do is support the intelligence of our body and our nervous system to make good decisions. Basically, when the environment supports good decisions or high functioning or honest transparency, connection, our body will make that decision. When those resources are not available, our body will go into a protective mechanism. And so I started to construct this model of reality and realized I can unwind that whole mechanism. I can kind of retake control over my life. I'm not in control over my life, or a better way of saying it is I don't get to choose whether I do the right thing or not, or what's best for me. And by actually learning how to reconnect to my body and all of those parts of myself, which I haven't been able to tolerate, I can become really present and embodied and live from my potential. And this gave me a map to realize, again, as I described, both how my challenges are negative and painful and causing problems for me, but also that there's a solution um, that really comes from caring about myself and being cared for more rather than less.
Do you think you mentioned about like these addictive behaviors in your 20s, and you went through obviously a loss of a parent when you were 12? Do you think addiction from kind of the work you've done is always coming from like a part of us and the body that's just been abandoned or not looked at or is in pain?
Well, I think everybody who has addiction has the right and the responsibility to defining their own reason. They get to discover that through their healing process. I would just name a few things that really stand out for me. One is I couldn't feel anything. I didn't know that at the time, but I couldn't feel life. I couldn't feel my body. My experience today of life, because of the work that I've done and because of the awakening I have, is life intrinsically, the present moment is beautiful. Like I feel my body, I feel myself, I feel a rich emotional life. The subtle aspects of consciousness are very alive for me. No lack of stimulation, just being here now. But when I was a teenager, I couldn't feel anything. I was numb. And so when I had tried drugs for the first time, they were so stimulating and so satisfying. I didn't have a way to access feeling alive. And it was very intoxicating. It had a great pull on me. I remember getting high for the first time, being like, what is this experience? I'm happy. I feel alive. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that I should, or I could feel like that all the time, that the life and consciousness is made to feel beautiful and alive. But because I didn't know that, I just kind of fell into drugs over and over again. And the problem with drugs is that the more you use them, the less they work. It's a terrible path to be on. At some point, you realize, like, I'm getting diminishing returns out of this, but without an alternative, because I didn't have the skills to face life or myself, because I didn't have any way of understanding how to make my life better or feel better. I just kind of kept turning to it over and over again. And of course, drugs can be physiologically addictive as well. That's certainly a component of it. But this is what I would emphasize. I had no mechanism to improve my felt state of life, and drugs were the best option. And I wasn't good at being a successful athlete or entertainer or investment banker. I didn't get that high of being successful in life either, because I didn't have those skills either. So I didn't really have much left. There really wasn't much left that made me feel good. And so I chose something that worked, even if it was very painful. Again, as soon as I realized there was another mechanism, I have not had a problem with addiction to drugs or anything like that since, because I found a replacement. I found an improvement for it.
You found something else to feel the highs of life that wasn't drugs.
Just to clarify again,
Yep.
drugs are diminishing return. The more you take drugs, the less you feel. You have to take harder drugs to get any rise out of yourself. And it gets worse. It's like going deeper in debt. Awakening and healing is the opposite. It's the more that you do it, the more beautiful the present moment and the ordinary moment gets. And so it's an investment into yourself. It's like building a kind of experiential wealth. And at some point, I just realized, like, there's no end to this. It feels good. It improves my life. It improves the life of my family and friends. And I just put a tremendous investment into that, and will continue to.
Amazing. So when you, just correct me if I'm wrong, but when you said you were like numb, before you went through your whole process discovering power versus force and going down this path and being able to experience the present moment, were you unable to enjoy the present moment because you were numbing out the hard emotions so you couldn't experience the good emotions as well? Was that the case?
That's a good way to look at it. Absolutely. When you close the door on your heart, you close the door full stop. If there's a tremendous amount of grief in your heart and you can't feel the grief, well, that also shuts you down from love and just connection and the morality that comes from the living heart. And so absolutely, in the avoidance of pain, you close the door on yourself. And as a result, all of the intelligence and beauty of being embodied. And that's a choice that we make, or that our consciousness or nervous system makes to protect us. But it is very, very limiting to both the highs and the lows of life.
I want to touch on kind of like releasing the pain or feeling a bit more into what was going on in the heart. Because it sounded like you had and I know many people share that they had this kind of defense mechanism for feeling any pain and go numb, like you shared today. Was it like kind of an ongoing process to release that, and you had to do something very, very regularly to allow it to release? Um, yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit
Well,
more
it's
about
I mean, it's definitely progressive. And it
that.
started off as being not very subtle, like huge outbursts of emotion through the heart, of crying. And at first it felt like, yeah, I have to show up to do this. But at some point, it's like a house burning down. Like there's a point in a house fire or any fire where like the fire department's not going to put the fire out. It's just progressed too far. And so after trying to get this thing to open and move, there was a point in which it just felt like at the drop of a hat or every day or waking up in the night, like my body's just is purging essentially. It's opening. And I lost control of it. And again, having a spiritual awakening can definitely induce that in an even stronger way. But at first, it's this feeling of, in me and in many of the people I work with, like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, I don't know if I want to feel all these feelings. And then people go for it. And then they're just in it. And then they stop being afraid of feelings. They just go, yeah, this is just a lot of whatever it is, anger, sadness, fear, shame. And especially if you have people around you that say, I'm here with you. This is beautiful. There's nothing wrong. When we have connection, it makes it even easier for us. When we don't have connection, we tend to be more insecure and feel less stable in the feeling of deep feelings, positive or negative. But when we have support, when somebody's really there with us and encourages us implicitly, then that can really lead us on. But again, at first, for most people, it's a huge leap. Like, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to feel all of that? Or when it starts to happen, a visceral fear, like it's destroying me and I don't know where it's going and I don't have any control over this. And I don't even know if it's going to improve my life. Here I am. I'm just feeling grief right now. And then you'll sit with somebody. I'm thinking of one man I know months later and he'll be like, oh yeah, it's changed my life in all these beautiful ways. And I have connection to love all the time. And I have this like care for people and care for life. Yeah, I guess all that movement of energy was just so positive and beautiful. And I'm not afraid of it anymore. But that's progressive. And then the question becomes, which is unique to every individual, like, how far do you want to take that? For me personally, I just was fascinated by the fact that we can have energy hidden inside of us. We can have a whole life, a whole world, a whole reality hidden inside of us. My living question is just, how deep does that rabbit hole go? Of course, because I'm so fluent in it now, I feel like I'm really well positioned to support people. That's part of my life purpose is to know so much about this inner life and the inner experience that when people come to me, I'm really ready to be with them and encourage them on their journey. So that's my job, is to live in every room of our inner house. And that's what makes me valuable, to support other people in part. So yeah, for everyone, it's a unique journey as to how intensely the feelings come up, but generally the arc is pretty universal. At first, it's kind of scary and we don't know what we're going to get out of it. And then we get really comfortable. Like, yeah, they're just feelings. Yeah, they're painful or yeah, they're uncomfortable, but that's what they're here to do. Our feelings move. That's their job. It's not a question of whether I feel them or not anymore. It's not, should I feel my feelings? It's, what are my feelings now and how do I support them to move? And that transformation process empowers people so that our bodies and our inner worlds and our relationships aren't such scary places to avoid anymore. You can also think about this as a capacity issue. Again, when my father died and I was 12, the nature of trauma is that it's overwhelming. I did not have the capacity to do that. So again, when people go on this journey, it's not like jumping, it's not like bungee jumping. I'm not pushing people to take a huge risk. It's about, how do we give your nervous system and your body and your mind as much capacity to be successful in this as possible? All about capacity. And that capacity is built progressively. The more you feel, you could call it the stronger your nervous system gets. I mean, big feelings or emotion in general is moving through your nervous system. And it's the health of that nervous system, the openness, the amount of integration that's going to allow emotion to move without essentially overwhelming you. And so that is progressively built. And as the capacity grows, the resistance to feeling or the knack to trying to strategize what to do with how we feel just lessens progressively because we don't need a defensive system when we have the capacity for it.
Mm.
Our body just adjusts and our mind just adjusts to more capacity.
Capacity is a really point that kind of made me pause for thought a little bit, because when you mentioned you were 12 years old when that traumatic event in your life happened. People young, like there's kids younger, have traumatic things as well. So you're kind of helping people build their capacity now as older adults to allow that thing to come up so they can experience it and therefore start experiencing life again.
Absolutely. And again, what were the three things that I help people with? Relational attunement,
Mm.
embodied presence, and spiritual awakening. I describe these as all being cutting edge. So, for example, 12 years, when I was 12 years old, that's only 28 years ago in the 90s and almost at the year 2000. And the word trauma didn't even exist in like culture. Like there was no one in my world who said, "Hey, Blaise, I can see that he has trauma essentially from this experience and we need to rally around and support him." There were supportive people in my life for sure, but no one really had a lived experiential understanding of trauma. You go back to the lives of my parents, especially my father, who had a very difficult life. It was impossible to get support with emotional issues and distress. So my message is that our civilization is rapidly evolving or waking up at this level of life, that these emotional issues need to happen. The fact that this podcast even exists, there would be no podcast about a young man talking about how to build self-confidence in the 1950s or 60s. It's a sign of how far we are coming. And so this is something that I really celebrate, is that when people come to me to learn these are skills that they develop for themselves, but become part of the wisdom, the brain trust of our civilization. And every day it's just getting more and more. It's progressing more and more and more. So by the time people come to me in the year 2026, our ability together to navigate the challenges that our ancestors really had to just survive through has grown so much that something as heavy as trauma and feeling pain for me is that one part of it is heavy and it's uncomfortable. And the other part is to really celebrate a civilizational update for all of us that we were all participating in. So yes, most of the people that come to me are later in life. They've already had things happen. They may or may not recognize what's happened to them. Again, that's the nature of trauma. We don't feel it. We just have these sort of symptoms in our life. And when they come to me, they then pass on that wisdom to their children or their grandchildren or their spouses or the people in their lives. And this is part of how we have a more and more sensitive and intelligent civilization, I believe. This is happening everywhere, all over the world.
Mm. Yeah, really getting in touch with what's going on with inside ourselves.
Yeah.
It's powerful. What do you find people are coming to you and you got some really great frameworks and support systems? I'm loving it. What do you find people come to you for? Are they in a part? I mean, it varies, but are they, I guess, but like, are they in like, I feel so numb, I feel so lost, I've been really hurt?
Sometimes people come to me for that. A lot of people come to me because they've already had a background in therapy and they've already had a background in meditation or some sort of spiritual practice. And I think I represent, just due to my age, really, I mean, quite literally, due to my age and where I exist in time and how my perspective has evolved in this modern era, this very contemporary era, I represent kind of the new technology, to be quite frank. And 20 years from now, there will be some young person that comes up after me that I think is going to have better technology than me as a product of what's happening in our civilization. In fact, I see that every day. My technology or my framework or approach or the orientation is growing rapidly again upon us for sure. So most people come to me not because they are lost as much. Most people come to me who have already had a lot of experience in this and thought about it and have been in therapy. They might be a therapist themselves. They probably already have a meditation practice. They come to me because our skills are updating as a civilization. So some of the teachers that I had when I first got into meditation would not have included trauma as a modality. In fact, if you went to a meditation retreat 30 years ago, nobody would have even said the word trauma. And their orientation to the stuff that we carry would have been very different. They would have said, just sit through it. Don't be your body. Just kind of let it go. Just relax and let it go. And as we grow, we realize, well, actually, there are more sophisticated ways of helping our body heal than we'd previously known. So what people come to me is really as a way to further develop and progress and something they're already quite invested in. That's usually what comes to me. But sometimes I do have the joy of meeting people who are coming for the first time and they know nothing. They say, I'm here. I just figured out that I have trauma, or I just realized that all these things are coming up for me. And what I found, which is a great joy to me, is they learn so quickly. Like you'd think that this is hard. And traditionally, I think it has been, as I described in my father's life, especially. I don't think he had a chance to heal from what he went through. I don't think it was possible in his lifetime. And people come to me with all kinds of intense or difficult circumstances and no prior experience. And what I find is that they can pick this up really, really quickly and have pretty radical experiences. It's the same in the field of awakening and spirituality. If you went to a retreat 30 years ago and then some sort of non-dual or maybe awareness-based retreat, the teacher would openly say, maybe 10% of you will understand what I'm talking about. The rest of you here are just going to be sort of frustrated and not get it. But in the field of non-duality and spirituality, that is not true. It's the amount of breakthrough that people are having is closing in on 100% rapidly. So yeah, it really doesn't matter to me whether people have previous experience or not. It just sort of happens that because of my skill set, I tend to get people with more experience.
That's awesome. Sounds like a good mixture of people to be working with as well, and very rewarding work. I'd love.
Yeah, I will just add that I got into this not because I knew how to teach, but I was ready to learn. And every time people with more diverse experiences and backgrounds come to me, the broader my experience comes. So it's a really wonderful part of working with people and being a teacher is having to figure out how to take in people's unique experiences and give them an opportunity to walk their own path. I think most teachers want to teach the path that they've walked. And it's been a great challenge for me to learn how to walk with the people that I teach and grow through that. So it's absolutely a joy that there's so much diversity in the people that I get to see.
Teaching and learning as you teach. That's awesome. Love that. How much I'm guessing a lot of your work, because there's a lot of stuff about like mindset and the way we think, but it sounds like a lot of your work is going more centered to going into the body and experiencing what that's telling us. But do you do sort of work with the mind as well?
Well, I mean, when I talk to people, there's definitely a mental component. People are hearing what I'm saying, and we're definitely teaching concepts, and all the things that I'm talking about are present. What's really important, one of the primary words in this field that I'm in is integration. What it basically means is it's not enough to just know something. That's one way to look at it. And what we really need to have knowledge about trauma or consciousness or loving people or self-esteem is to have our body experience line up with our mental experience, line up with our emotional experience, line up with the experience of our connection to our soul or the deeper aspects of ourselves and our understanding of the universe as a whole. There needs to be a coherence and an integration between many different levels of myself. So it's not that mental understanding is not important. It's just a realization that mental understanding is not enough. And so a good example of this is like, wow, I know I shouldn't be reactive at my whatever coworker, child, spouse, but I am. Well, knowing I shouldn't be reactive is not enough to actually stop being reactive. You need to build that capacity into your body. So most of the things we're looking for as an intelligence or a capacity actually exist from this integration, whether it's at the nervous system level, most of it or much of it is at the sort of body or nervous system level, but it definitely extends beyond that. And the key is that once you have this experience in your body, it will be translated by your mind and it will become your mindset. So your mind is a very important navigating tool in navigating your reality. But my suggestion is it will follow your embodied experience and help you navigate after you are developing these skills. So the main thing that I get people to do is to learn how to integrate their thinking and their body experience. Because often, as I found out very early in our journey, often we talk in a way that's very disconnected from what's happening in our body. And just really naturally, just the common way in which we connect with people on the street is they say, how are we doing? We say, I'm doing good. But actually, if I was really honest, I'd notice I'm feeling sad today. I don't say that necessarily to my neighbor because it's polite company, but we learn in the first thing that I teach people how to do is to unify my words and my feelings so that I'm learning to speak from the whole of myself. So if somebody asks me how I am, part of my experience is that I feel happy or fine. But part of it, there's also some sadness. And it's through that unification that our intelligence, you could say our mindset expands, becomes broader and more intelligent to include the wisdom of our heart and gut and our whole nervous system and body, and then all these higher aspects of ourself. And all that kind of gets funneled through the narration device that is our thinking and mind. But that, again, it follows the experience rather than leads to it.
I like that. It's integrating all of you together. Not that the mental stuff, I think you said, isn't important. It's important, but it's not like knowing something intellectually is different from experiencing it, like you said.
Yeah, and we want our in my worldview, we want our mind to be informed by experiences that we have, not ideas that we have about experience. A classic example is people will say, well, it's all one. It's like, well, if you tell yourself that, that's one thing. But if you experience that and that experience tells you, that's a totally different thing. Having the
Definitely.
experience of oneness is profoundly satisfying. Telling yourself that it's all one, I think is much, much less satisfying and transformative. So always lead with the experience and then let your words and concepts follow. Because then you can say it's all one all you want. It's true. You already have the experience in it. And those words now point back to something that you know deeply. And so that's very powerful. Is to use, this is essentially what a mantra is to use your thinking as a way to navigate back to the resources that you develop through your practice. You know about hard work. I know a little bit about traveling and taking risks. You know about putting yourself out there. And you can refer to these, right? So that those are true for you because you've experienced them, because you know them deeply and fully. And so those are your resources. Absolutely, you can call upon them. If I don't know about those things, and telling myself isn't going to help me so much. So
It's really good an example and outline for us. No, I like that. You've actually got to experience and then you know it. I take it as. Blaise,
mhm.
I know you've got you're doing loads in the world, you're supporting people, you're teaching from your experience and helping people work through their own journeys, and you're seeing lots of different people come to you. I'd love to know, where is the best place for people to find you? They want to reach out, get hold of your work and your resources, get in contact. And I'd love to know if there was maybe one point you wanted to leave us with, that maybe it's something we shared today or it's something else that would help the listener better their relationship with themselves.
Yeah. So first, thank you. BlaiseKennedy.com. In the show notes, there will be a specific
Yeah.
link for the podcast listeners. And I absolutely do work with people and run all kinds of programs that are specific to helping you with all of the things that we're talking about. And I also offer free meditations every week. In fact, I'm doing one in about 5-10 minutes. We sit in silence and I teach meditation openly for free. I'd love to meet you and join you there if you have a meditation practice or if you want to try it. And I have all kinds of content on the internet, and I'm about to launch my own kind of live call-in show where I work with people live. Because there's one of my great joys is working with people, obviously, and showing the work. So what would be my positive message? What do I want to leave with people with? I absolutely want to leave you with a positive message. I think in our world right now, there's a bit of a carrot and a stick. And the stick is, I think we're under a lot of pressure. We're under pressure at a civilizational level, at a global level. At a pressure domestically within our own nations, within our families. I think there's a lot of pressure on the individual. There's a lot of things coming up. And if this is happening to you, well, then you're part of something that's happening globally. And the good news is that it's a tremendous opportunity. There has never been a better time to be receiving the pressure of the universe and to be going through a transformative process. I believe the resources to support people and the skill to support people, the intelligence of life is permeating our world in a way that makes things possible that have not previously been possible in our world. So this is a great time. Again, the stick, as you might feel that as pressure or pain in your life, it's not a problem. I mean, it's uncomfortable, but it's a sign that change wants to happen. challenge in your life is a sign that change wants to happen. And globally, the resources and capacity are growing with every day, every single day. So, blessings on your journey, listener. I hope you find yourself being part of a massive transformation on this planet, that your personal experience or your personal challenges are not disconnected from what is happening globally. What anything I've described today, it's all part of one huge movement in the universe. So that's my positive message.
Beautiful. I love it, Blaise. Thank you. And listeners, if you're looking for more resources, as we talked about, Blaise's links are in the show notes below, generously giving all these meditations, giving support, working with people. So check out the link in the show notes below to get hold of Blaise and his amazing work and resources. So a massive thank you, Blaise, for coming on today.
Thank you, Johnny.
Awesome. So that concludes today's episode. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.